calling this a no kings rally when it's actually an anti-democracy rally is to crap on it. I'm sorry, is to basically make fun of it. And I think that that has been the Trump administration's approach. They didn't try to stop it.
Hey everyone, welcome back. You know, it's honestly wild how predictable MAGA outrage has become. For weeks, we were told the No Kings rally would be a violent, radical event funded by Hamas, run by Antifa, filled with so-called America-hating extremists. But when it finally happened, it was peaceful. Ordinary Americans, many of them older citizens, took to the streets to stand up for democracy and the idea that no man, not even Donald Trump, is above the law. And yet, instead of respecting their right to protest, Trump responded with one of the most disgusting stunts we've ever seen. An AI-generated video of himself wearing a crown, flying a fighter jet, and dropping feces on peaceful protesters. That's not satire, that's contempt. It's the behavior of a man who sees citizens as subjects and mockery as leadership. What's worse is watching Republican leaders rush to defend it. Mike Johnson called it satire. Pete Seat brushed it off as just trolling. Think about that. The president humiliates millions of Americans for exercising free speech, and his party laughs it off. That isn't trolling. It's a moral failure dressed as politics. Because the truth is, the No Kings rally wasn't about partisanship. It was about principle, a peaceful stand against authoritarianism. And the fact that Trump and his allies responded with mockery instead of respect tells you everything about how fragile their movement has become. Let's take a look at how CNN's panel covered this and how MAGA pundits tried and failed to spin one of the most shameful moments in modern politics.
The Trump administration is dumping on Americans expressing their First Amendment rights, and an AI video he posted shows just how filthy Trump's willing to go against those who oppose him. A warning now, in case you haven't finished your dinner. Trump posted this AI video to social media featuring himself. You see him there wearing a crown, flying a fighter jet, and then you see that. It appears that he is dropping feces on protesters marching in the No Kings rallies over the weekend. An estimated 7 million people showed up to those rallies, and there were about 2,000 demonstrations held across the country. But it wasn't just the president doing the crap slinging. His vice president posting this fake video showing Democratic leaders bowing to Trump, who has a crown on, holding a sword there. The White House mocked Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer with this little video or pictures put out. So did the Transportation Department, by the way, putting this out. Trump's communication director took a jab at Kamala Harris's husband with this. And these are the people that Americans are paying to run the government, which, by the way, as you know, is still shut down. And when confronted with Trump's sewage bomb, here's how the Republican Speaker of the House tried to spin it.
The president uses social media to make a point. You can argue he's probably the most effective person who's ever used social media for that. He is using satire to make a point.
All right, we've got our great panel here. Let's start with you, Pete Seat. You're so lucky you're in the hot seat. The president is supposed to be the president for all Americans. Why is this okay?
Well, they're calling it what it is, and that is a partisan charade. It is being completely overblown. Let me back up for a second. The very same people who mocked Donald Trump for his fixation on crowd sizes, saying it was indicative of absolutely nothing, want us to focus on the fact that 98% of Americans had nothing to do with these protests over the weekend. They want to overblow this and exaggerate it and make it sound like it is a massive wave against Donald Trump. What it is a Democrat Party stunt, one that was co-sponsored by the Communist Party of America. It is on the flyer, their logo. That should be disavowed. It should have never been allowed on the flyer to begin with. So the Speaker of the House, I don't agree with all of his language that he's using to describe this, but they're pointing out what it is, and that is just a bunch of partisan politics. If Joe Biden was president, these people wouldn't give a darn.
Do you think that if Joe Biden was president and he posted that video of Republicans who were out there expressing their rights with it dumping crap on their
I don't like a lot of the social media that Donald Trump puts out there. He's trolling. You can agree or disagree with the trolling, but it is his style of communicating. He seems to enjoy it, and a lot of his supporters do. I don't.
What do you think about this, Keith? As you hear, the responses from Republicans have been like, oh, he's trolling, oh, he's joking, oh, this is not a serious protest, even though there were some 7 million people out there.
You know, where does it end? What are we doing here? I mean, I was at the protest on Saturday in New York City. It was entirely peaceful. There were 100,000 people or so who were there down 7th Avenue in Manhattan. And there were millions of people at other protests across the country. No, it wasn't the entire population, but even when Dr. King led his marches, there were only a small fragment of the black community who was there. But it was a representation of the power of the people standing up against their government. People have busy lives, and they took time out of their lives to do that. And then to have the President of the United States figuratively crap on them for expressing their right to free speech is an affront to democracy. It's not only juvenile and immature, it's a reflection of where we are as a country today. On top of all that, then you have Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, and other people in the Republican Party saying this is okay because it's just Trump being Trump. Well, you know, last week they were saying it was okay for 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds to make racist comments about Nazis and stuff like that. But now we have the President of the United States literally attacking a 23-year-old, Harry Sisson, dumping crap on him. And that's okay, because that's fair game. But, you know, when the Republicans are doing it and they're calling each other Nazis, they're just kids. This is just a reflection of the hypocrisy of the Republican Party.
Keith Boykin made some excellent points, but what really deserves attention here is how quickly the entire MAGA machine has shifted from panic to parody. For days, all we heard was fear-mongering claims that the No Kings rally was being bankrolled by Hamas, coordinated by Antifa, and infiltrated by communist agitators. Mike Johnson, along with half the right-wing media circuit, painted a doomsday picture of chaos in the streets. But when the day finally came, what happened? Millions of Americans peacefully marched, families brought their kids, and older citizens carried signs that simply read, "No one is above the law." No violence, no riots, no vandalism, just democracy in motion. And yet, instead of apologizing or even acknowledging how wrong they were, MAGA figures did what they always do: they rewrote the story. The same voices that warned about terrorists now dismiss it all as trolling. When Trump posted that AI video of himself wearing a crown, flying a fighter jet, and literally dumping filth on peaceful protesters, his allies didn't condemn it, they defended it. They called it satire, they called it humor, they called it Trump being Trump. That's the moral vacuum at the heart of this movement. When the leader humiliates ordinary Americans, it's a joke. When others question it, it's treason. This whiplash is part of the MAGA playbook. First, create a crisis. Then, when reality disproves the narrative, pretend it was all performance art. They can never admit error because the entire identity of the movement depends on never being wrong. So when the truth surfaces, they twist it, they logic pretzel it until it fits the delusion again. Pete Seat's appearance on CNN was a perfect example. He tried to sound reasonable, saying he doesn't love everything Trump posts, but then defended it anyway. That's not nuance. That's cowardice pretending to be balance. And imagine, just for 1 second, if Barack Obama or Joe Biden had done something even remotely like this. A video of a Democratic president dropping excrement on conservative protesters? The outrage would consume the airwaves for months. Fox News would call for impeachment before breakfast. But when Trump does it, his defenders call it effective communication. They lower the bar every single time, and in doing so, they redefine indecency as authenticity. What Trump's video and the MAGA reaction show isn't strength, it's weakness. It's the insecurity of a movement that has to resort to mockery and shock value because it has no vision left to sell. When you have no policy, you lean on performance. When you can't govern, you entertain. MAGA's entire strategy has become humiliation as spectacle, cruelty as communication. It's not leadership, it's propaganda wrapped in memes. And this isn't just about one video. It's about the normalization of behavior that should disgust everyone, regardless of party. When leaders make it acceptable to attack citizens exercising their First Amendment rights, the foundation of democracy itself erodes. Free speech becomes a punchline, and dissent becomes an invitation for ridicule. The real takeaway from this isn't about Trump's immaturity. It's about the enablers who keep pretending it's harmless. Every pundit who laughs it off, every official who shrugs and says, that's just his style, is contributing to a political culture where accountability no longer exists. This is how democracies rot, not through sudden collapse, but through a slow acceptance of indecency as normal. So if you believe politics should still mean something, if you believe truth, dignity, and democracy deserve more than a meme war, stay tuned and subscribe. Because this story isn't about outrage, it's about awareness. And the more we see this behavior for what it really is, the harder it becomes for them to hide behind the joke.
Old enough to remember when Hillary Clinton used the deplorables comment, said that half of the people that support Donald Trump were part of this basket of deplorables, and Republicans went crazy, condemning her. To this day, they still do it. So why are Republicans covering for Trump when he does something like this, saying these people are a joke, they're not indicative of America, and then he has this video?
Well, I want to start by saying I totally support the protests. I think that this is, a very important part of what it means to be an American is to raise up your voice in any form that you wish. We have these First Amendment rights, and they are precious and dear. I also think that this was not indicative or representative even of the mainstream Democratic Party. These protests were overwhelmingly white. They were overwhelmingly elderly people, older people. Now, again, white boomers have the right to have a mass therapy session about the fact that Donald Trump won. But to call it a no kings protest, to act like he is a king, is so utterly preposterous. This is a man who won the popular vote. He won every swing state. He is a person who is enacting the exact agenda he promised he was going to enact while he was campaigning. And so what they are actually protesting is the absolute perfection of American democracy, where a person campaigned on an agenda, won the popular vote, and is now enacting that agenda. So it was actually a protest of democracy, all of which is to say the only way to greet such a preposterous proposition, calling this a no kings rally when it's actually an anti-democracy rally, is to crap on it. I'm sorry, is to basically make fun of it. And I think that has been the Trump administration's approach. They didn't try to stop it, God forbid, because he's not a king. They allowed them to have their say. They allowed them to go out there, and then they made fun of them.
How do you
Look,
respond to her argument?
Yeah, first off, it was the largest protest, I believe, in history, right? We never have protests that are the entire population of America. So it was the largest protest. And there's a reason why people are protesting, which is that Trump has not delivered on the stuff he campaigned on. Trump campaigned on lowering the cost of living, on bringing manufacturing back to America, on rebuilding people's means of making a living. And he has failed on those fronts. The only thing that he has done is he has weaponized the U.S. government to go after his political opponents. And that's what people are upset about. That's why it is bringing mainstream people out. I was out in San Francisco, and we marched a few miles. It wasn't old people doing that march. It was people from all walks of life, all races, all ages.
Now, the spin has completely come full circle. The same MAGA figures who spent weeks warning that the No Kings rallies would bring chaos, destruction, and foreign infiltration are suddenly treating it all like a joke. Overnight, it's gone from Hamas-funded terror to boomer therapy. You can't make that up. This is how MAGA propaganda works. They create hysteria to scare their followers, and when reality proves them wrong, they pivot to mockery so they don't have to take responsibility. Mike Johnson, Scott Jennings, Batya Anger, Sargon, all of them played the same game. When the fear narrative collapsed under the weight of peaceful crowds and truth, they didn't apologize. They laughed. And that's the MAGA formula in action. Exaggerate, lie, deflect, repeat. When they can't paint their opponents as dangerous, they call them pathetic. When they can't make people afraid, they try to make them feel small. MAGA needs constant villains. It's the only way to hold its fractured movement together. One week it's Antifa, the next it's Hamas, and when those stories lose traction, it becomes old liberals or communists. It's not about consistency or facts. It's about keeping the audience angry enough to never stop watching. The truth is, the No Kings protests were never about some literal belief that Trump wears a crown. It was a statement, a message about power, accountability, and how dangerously close this country has come to treating one man like a monarch. Millions of Americans came together to say, "We don't bow to anyone." That scares the right far more than any protest ever could. Because when ordinary citizens realize their collective voice is louder than Trump's threats, his entire illusion of power starts to crumble. MAGA pundits like Bhatia, Anger Sargon, and Pete Seat will never admit that. They know what's really at stake. So instead, they resort to downplaying what happened, calling it therapy, dismissing the people involved, pretending it was all meaningless. But deep down, they recognize what this movement represents: a country waking up. And that's something they can't control, can't gaslight, and can't meme away. The hypocrisy is staggering. These are the same people who still rage about Hillary Clinton's deplorables comment like it happened yesterday, treating it as the ultimate unforgivable insult. Yet when Trump ridicules millions of Americans as weak, stupid, or laughable, they cheer. When he mocks peaceful protesters standing up for democracy, they call it satire. That's not just a double standard, that's the moral collapse of an entire party. They've traded principle for personality and decency for loyalty. And their new talking point about the protests being just a bunch of old people is as lazy as it is false. There were people from every age group, every background, every race, marching in cities, suburbs, and small towns. 7 million Americans showed up. That's one of the largest coordinated demonstrations in our nation's history. And MAGA's response? Well, it wasn't everyone. That's the language of people terrified to admit they're outnumbered. They can't handle the idea that millions of their fellow citizens see through the act, that democracy, even bruised and battered, is still louder than fear. And let's not forget what makes this moment historic. This wasn't a protest about party or policy, it was about power. It was about a country reminding itself that we are not ruled by kings, we are governed by consent. The peacefulness of those marches, the diversity of the faces, the message written on signs from coast to coast, that's what democracy looks like when it refuses to die quietly. So when MAGA laughs, let them. Because that laughter isn't confidence, it's panic disguised as humor. They mock what they can't control. They belittle what they secretly fear. And deep down, they know that once people stop being afraid to speak up, their grip on this country slips a little more. If you made it this far, make sure to hit that subscribe button. There's a lot more to talk about, and I'm just getting started.